Hi, I'm Abby Rosenblum, founder of the Social Modern Matchmaking and your host of Ghosted, a podcast about making dating easy and fun again so you can find your boo. Get it? We'll talk with dating experts, coaches, and real clients of mine and single people from around the world. Stick around for corny jokes, dating advice, and deep dives into the psychology behind finding love.
If we're not really taking care of ourselves, it impacts our self-esteem. It impacts how we show up, in relationship, because there's so many subtle things I've realized that speak louder than words. And it's almost like intimacy itself is a language that's not spoken. It's more in the body language. It's more in the tone behind the words. It's in the way the eyes are reacting, So it's so big, and especially when we're dating, we're almost like interviewing each other. It feels like in modern dating, it feels like you're shopping and like interviewing for a job or something. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Swipe left. My friend always jokes, she's like, I'm getting carpal tunnel syndrome from swiping left all the time.
Oh,
just
no.
cracking up. I know, it's so funny. And then there's always like, oh, maybe there's a better one. Like if this week it doesn't work out, or, lots of people are just using these apps to hook up, and that's just never been my jam. But, I talk to a lot of my friends who are single. Most of my other married friends are getting divorced. And it's a really big theme for us, working moms, or even moms that weren't working and now are. I mean, it's just so, and we all think that it's going to be better. And it's tricky. I have to say, for me, it's been really, really tricky. So dating history, divorced about 10 years ago, was married for 10 years, lived in Europe. I built this really big, awesome life, and then got real about my values and how different they were from my husband's. And then I moved back to the States with our daughter, and really didn't date for like 6 years. And I just didn't feel like I had space or time. I didn't want to be bringing a bunch of men home when my daughter was young. And I'm not really into bars, like where you meet people really. And so I didn't date. It was almost like easier that way, just because I didn't have family to take care of my daughter. And I just didn't feel like it was a good idea for whatever reason. And then in, my mid 40s was the first time I actually started to date. I'm like, well, how is this going to work? So I signed up to the apps, Match.com, Tinder, all of them, and just kept. And then I started to date. It was really tricky because I scheduled it. It was like a job, right? So I scheduled like tea or coffee every day from like 4 to 6, and at least 3 days a week. I'd be sure to meet one. Yeah, for at least like 3 days a week. Yeah, if not 5, and sometimes 7. And I was like, I just need to like figure out what this is. And so for the first time in my life, Abby, I dated in my 40s. Because I'm just like a serial monogamist. So I thought, well, this has not worked out well, so I need to try again. But what I found out, Abby, was like on the 4th, like if in 5 minutes, like if you're going to want to hang out with this guy again, right? Or even have another conversation. So the ones that, and there weren't many that I wanted to continue speaking with, but the ones I did, it was like by date 4, it's like if you're not putting out, like something's wrong or they're moving on, which is what it is, right? I mean, but I'm not like that, right? Like I really, even though I was going to date, I was like going to stop dating if I decided to get intimate, sexually intimate with one of the people. So it was pretty tricky because I'm like, but I have a lot of good friendships with some of the people I met, which is pretty awesome. And I learned a lot about myself as I was presenting and representing myself on these dates. Like, what's my story? And I noticed I was like modifying my story based on kind of what I thought they wanted to hear.
Interesting.
Which I would not recommend doing. Not because it didn't work out.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you still feel like you were being authentic, or did it feel like you were at least just kind of trying to please that person?
I definitely think it was authentic because it was definitely a part of my story, but it wasn't like I was sharing it. I was sharing it more for them, definitely as a part of like people pleasing, because I'm good at that and I succeed at that and I win at that, right? I know that's really comfortable for me. It's a lot less comfortable for me to be myself and have someone reject me.
Right. And I think we've all been there. I run into a lot of women, I see this a lot, that are in kind of people pleasers. And it's actually really difficult to date because pretty much everyone's going to like you but then it's really hard to then say no to a person that you might not be interested in.
So hard. And it's really what I've realized is like a codependency. It's like either you were raised in a kind of codependent love and don't know any differently, or you actually just have some codependent tendencies. And I don't like to pathologize it with that kind of label, but I think it's important for us to, especially as women, because we were trained to be that way, or at least I was. And I realized at a certain point, there are no shortage of men. And I think we, in our 40s and 50s especially, we think there's a shortage of men. Like, oh my God, if I don't like get a guy now, like it's never going to happen. And that's not true. There's so many men, and they're just as interested in partnership and relationships as we are. I didn't believe that before, but I believe that now. Mm-hmm. And you're doing him and you a huge disservice if you're not really being yourself, even in the face of potential rejection.
Oh, totally. Because they're going to find out who you really are eventually.
Exactly. So why waste your time? Working moms don't have any time to waste, but we want to date. And so, it's also kind of tricky because I'm like a health nut. So like going out to dinner, and like, I remember, this is a silly, funny vignette. So I went out with this guy, really interesting money market manager, like really great guy, just into sports and just like, like every item on the list he pretty much checked off. Mm-hmm. So we're having tea, and some people are going to really dislike me for saying this, but this is true. Like, so he's using aspartame in his coffee, and I have a judgment about aspartame. And this guy was older than me too. And I was like, okay, aspartame. Like, is this a deal breaker? So first date, I'm like, hey, did you know anything about aspartame? Like how it's a neurotoxin and it excites your brain cells to death and is a precursor for Alzheimer's. And I was like sending him articles about it.
Oh my God.
I mean, I should have just relaxed about it. But then like by the fourth date, after he had like all the information, he was still choosing aspartame. I'm like, wow. I mean, because I'm thinking long term. I'm like, I'm going to be the person wiping the drool off of his face when he has Alzheimer's, in 40 years. Because that's really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in long-term partnership. Of course I want to be in the moment and have fun, but so anyway, that was kind of a silly thing that I look back and laugh at. Like, there's so many things that
an important thing, obviously health and living a healthy lifestyle is a big value of yours. And even though it seems so small, it doesn't really align with what you want, is kind of what it's sounding like.
Yeah. And there's like some things I'm totally willing to negotiate. Like, I don't expect my boyfriend to be vegan. I don't expect him to not drink alcohol or, do as many hours of yoga a week as I do. So I think at some point I had to come to like terms on what I'm willing to accept and negotiate on and things I'm not willing to negotiate on. And like for the first time I have faith in my relationship, God. And I negotiated on that in every previous relationship. I've only had like 4 relationships in my life. And it's so great. It's so great because there's so many things that are challenging and you can't figure out. And you just like can pray and just be like, okay, we're just going to hand this over. And miraculously, it's like every time it makes life easier and something miraculous happens. So that's huge.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask too, when you went into dating, did you think about these are the top, 5 things that I value most in a partner? Or did it kind of evolve as you went on those probably hundreds of lunch coffee dates?
I need to like a spreadsheet to like keep track of who was who. I think I had a general idea of what my values were going in for sure, but I don't think it was as clear as it is now. So I do think it also developed over time. I'm really clear about my values as a person, and then again that negotiable, non-negotiable. And I think you brought it up a couple of times, and I think that knowing what your values are and having those shared values is so huge, especially in your 40s. Because when I was 24 and I got married, I knew who I was, but I didn't know who I was like I do today in my late 40s. So it's really different. For me, and I would suggest also for anyone listening, that my conditions of satisfaction, and that's different than the checklist of what I want. what I want is different than what I need to feel satisfied. And tuning into and tapping into satisfaction versus need totally changes the landscape, or totally changed the landscape for me.
Interesting. Okay, can you tell me more about this? I'm fascinated.
Yeah, like I had to dig deep inside of myself, a kind of excavation to find out like, okay, what does Helene need to feel satisfied? And it's simple things like I need a really good, wholesome meal, and I want to share that with somebody. Like I get so much delight from making healthy food and having my partner enjoy it. It's so delightful. I love it. It
You're
really
smiling and
satisfies
happy
me.
right now.
It's like I know some people don't like to cook or whatever, but that's like my thing. Um, I love to spend a lot of time like with touch, like massage and just like cuddling and like that's real. I feel so filled up. Also we're in nature, like so someone who really loves nature and is comfortable being in nature, like for sunrises and sunsets. Like I really like what fills me up, like what makes me feel really deeply satisfied. And so I had to really think about the experiences and sometimes even dream into those spaces of like, oh, if that could be. And I have to say that the person I'm dating now is, I'm like, are you real? You sometimes I like poke him. I'm like, are you real? Like because
That's
like,
great.
the more you dream into it, the more you embody the idea or even the experience of satisfaction, the more I think you attract it to yourself.
It's very true. If you're just like, hey, I'm just hoping to meet anyone who will talk to me, you're going to attract someone very vastly different than what you're talking about.
It's true because I've attracted previously people who are not healthy for me. They were based on like this is going to sound kind of cliche and a little jargony, but people who were like reenacting like wounding. Does that make sense? Like
Mm.
trauma wounding. I was attracting people who would reactivate my trauma wounding, and I have a whole like every relationship had an expression of that. And ended of course in destruction and the dangerous situations. It was not good.
Right.
So
And in the
I was
beginning, I was going to say, in
yeah,
the
I was,
beginning, it probably felt amazing.
oh yeah, totally ecstatic.
Mhm.
And I remember it was just a couple years ago that I went to a psychologist, and I said, listen, I see a pattern here. I want to stop this. This is not good. Like I'm done with this pattern. I will grow alone, which is not really what I want, but I'll grow alone than attract another one of these guys, because it was like different guys, same dynamic, and I'm like, oh God, not again. Like what am I
Mhm.
doing? And it was like I couldn't see what I couldn't see. But it took its own work, Like how could I trust how could I trust my attractor? Because it was broken. Clearly, it was attracting people who were just not that great for me.
So, how did you start to make that shift where you felt like you could, trust your attractor? Or some people say, my picker is broken?
Oh, good. I'm not the only one that thinks that.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I hear that all the time.
okay. I had to start. I had to really look at the pattern and the kind of person, and then I had to become like an expert in that type of person. And then I could notice the red flags, and then I could start to appreciate the quality of that attraction without attaching to it. So I had to
Mm,
gain some perspective, right? So I said, okay, this is the type of person I'm attracting. This is what the attraction feels like, and these are the red flags. So it took me a couple of years of reading and researching and dating to really dive into that in a more meaningful way.
amazing. So, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, my picker is broken, you can fix it. Because I get this all the time from people like, I'm attracting this person, or no one likes me, or everyone I meet is just XYZ. Um, it's okay. You can start attracting a different type of person. And I believe we did an episode on manifesting that person. It was probably a while ago. but
Mm.
scroll back because you can find that one.
Yeah, I read so many books. And then I think you and I talked briefly about the book Deeper Dating,
Oh,
which
yes, we
which
love.
is a great, yeah, it's a great book. I've actually just started it, but I think that that's a really great book to live in again to that authenticity of sharing your greatest gift and deepest gift. And if someone doesn't appreciate it, then it's a great indicator like, hey, okay, that's one of the billions of people that are available. Because I only need one. That's all I needed.
Yeah, you only need one. And I talk about this all the time, abundance of people and having that mindset that you only need one of these 50 million single people in the US, which is a lot. So if you just need one of them, you can we can find that. And there's probably multiple ones in there that you would like
Yeah,
and have a great
totally.
relationship with.
Totally. And I just didn't get that, Abby. I did not get that. That there's more. It was took. I don't know why. There's that scarcity of like, oh, I'm never gonna meet him. It's gonna be desperate and lonely. Like,
Well,
no.
sometimes it's almost easier to be in that place, because then you're kind of ready for the loneliness or rejection rather than saying, okay, I'm open to it. And then rejection can feel a little different too.
Yeah, you make it sound really easy the way you just said it.
It's not that easy, though. I know it's not that easy.
I mean, it
Just
goes back to like when we were a
mindset,
kid.
just like that.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, like it goes back to when I was a kid, and like you didn't get chosen for the dodgeball team, or it's like I mean, no one likes to be rejected. That's that very young part of ourselves, and I think one of the benefits in our 40s and 50s is that we know that we can be resilient, pick ourselves back up, and it's not gonna break us. But I think there's also this phenomena, and I've heard this from all of my friends. Like there's this like fear of commitment. Way
Hmm.
more so. Like I felt like in my 20s, I was just going to dive in, and I had no fear really of like the decimation of devoting myself and building a life and giving it everything that I had and more. Having a baby or more baby, having multiple babies, building a home, building a business together, and then having to unravel that dream and all the guilt that comes from that, and then the forgiveness. And it's just like, and then you want to start over again. And we really do have that baggage. And I find that the baggage is preventing, and myself included, the ability to commit on a deeper level. And I find that it's the same for the men. Like the men will want to just kind of date and just kind of be easy about it. Like, well, I've got my kids, and they're kind of like the sidekick. And then the girlfriends just have a high turnover for a lot of men because the commitment is scary for us both, right? But and for different reasons.
No, it definitely is. And it was interesting too. This is like great timing of these episodes. A couple episodes ago, we had he calls himself the divorced dad on, and he has a whole bunch of groups for people who are divorced to help support them in different cities all over the US. So I love that we're now getting the female perspective on this as well. And I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you too, what do you feel like, when I work with someone who is a single mom or even a working mom and maybe they co-parent, their time is so valuable, obviously, and there's not as much of it. Do you feel like that's one of the biggest obstacles sometimes for single moms, working moms dating? What are some of the other things that you see maybe in your own life or friends?
I see a lot of different things. I
Hmm.
see single parents prioritizing their relationship over their children, and I think there are huge consequences to that way of being.
Hmm.
I don't mean to judge it. I just mean I understand it. I
Right.
mean, and then I see a lot of single parents not prioritizing relationship and then prioritizing their kids, and there are consequences to that too. My conclusion at this time is that the balance is key to have both because our kids are going to grow up and they are going to leave home. I mean, if you've done a good job,
Yeah.
chances are the kids are going to grow up and have their own relationships and their own lives and their own careers, and you'll get to see mom or dad from time to time. And that's normal. That's the way it should be. But the kids are going to leave. And I think I'm doing a disservice to my family if I'm not caring for myself. And part of my happiness and what I see for my future is a relationship. And I also would like to And I know it's too late, but I also would like to model healthy relationship. So I think that modeling that for our children is critical, because clearly her dad and I didn't work out, and that is terrible. I'm so sad that it didn't work out. That's not the way I wanted it to be, or else I wouldn't have gotten married and had a baby. Right? But it happened. And we're trying to make the best of it. And she didn't get the modeling. And nor did I, actually, as a kid, which makes it even more difficult. I mean, statistically, like over 90% of divorced kids from divorced marriages will be divorced. So the
That
modeling piece,
oh, I haven't
it's
heard that
big.
statistic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's changed since I read it. I read this book called The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce, and it's a 35-year landmark study. And listen, I don't think divorce is a good solution, even though I'm divorced. I think it's really, really tough. But I think that it's important to prioritize your relationship, but not too much, right? This is the first time I'm dating a parent, and I love it. I love it because it's like his kids come first. Like yesterday, we had a day planned, and his son came home spontaneously. His son is in his 20s. And I was like, okay, all bets are off. Like, I'm cool to go to the beach alone. Like, totally fine. Like, or like we'll do something later, so I feel like prioritizing the kids is important. The kids need to know they're important. I think that, so having somebody in your life that can really understand that, whether they're a parent or not. But we haven't really integrated the families. So it's totally unknown territory for me how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I always wonder that because I'm always asking people when I bring on someone who has kids, do you envision this Brady Bunch family? Some people are like, yeah, I'd love to bring everybody together. And others are like, I would never want that to happen. I never want to bring other kids involved. My kids always come first. And I always have a hard time with that of, okay, so how is another person even going to work into your life? Are they just always going to be
Yeah.
fifth
That doesn't
fiddle
seem
to
realistic.
someone
That
else?
seems like an intimacy avoidant, commitment avoidant, like on some level, attachment avoidant strategy. I don't mean to be judgmental, but that's just my take
Not
on what I'm
judgmental at
hearing.
all. Yeah. And I
No,
hear
I avoid intimacy and commitment in all kinds of ways. So it's not like I'm speaking like I'm better than that. I only know it because I am it. So I'm working on it.
right. I mean, I am a like secure avoidant attachment style. So, I see that play out in my own life. I mean, I'm married now and, I still face all of these same things, on a different level. But, and I see it in single people and I'm like, oh, that I get you. I
I
was
get you.
there.